Hey everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 10th to the 16th of February 2025. So, this week Sony had a state of play. They kind of dropped in out of nowhere on everybody. But anyway, this PlayStation this article over on the PlayStation blog does everything in alphabetical order. It's a bit of a weird one, but okay. So we had the Borderlands 4 kind of gameplay trailer, I guess, probably the best way to explain it. What I found kind of interesting here is that Borderlands 4 it seems to be a whole lot faster than that Borderlands is. It seems like they're taking a few cues from maybe Doom. How well Doom was received potentially, because there's a lot of movement. Your character just all by themselves moves a lot faster than you typically do in Borderlands. Then there's a lot of traversal mechanics, some locomotion mechanics. You can swim for some reason. I don't know why you would want to. Anyway, I think there's a grappling thing somewhere as well. So it's clear they've taken a lot of inspiration, we'll say, from probably like live service shooter kind of things. Destiny, Apex Legends, Fortnite in some ways, but it's also a fair bit of Doom Eternal in there as well, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if it's going to get me to play Borderlands 4, but it's certainly interesting. I might be more interested to play it if it ends up on, like, I don't know, Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or something like that. Anyway, so that was Borderlands 4. It is slated for release some stage at the end of September, so 23rd of September, and there will be a larger gameplay debut in another state of play, some stage in spring. So there's going to be one between now and the usual summer state of play. Maybe it's just a smaller one, I guess, because this one was this one was fairly large. This is next one, Darwin's Paradox. So this is from Konami, kind of oddly enough. What I'm getting from Darwin's Paradox is that it is probably a test game for a new development team, just to see what they can put together, and then maybe Konami will give them more money to work on something a bit bigger. But it seems kind of interesting just from the outset. So you're playing an octopus, and it is a kind of precision platformer type thing, but there's also a little bit of puzzly elements to it. You do have the camouflage abilities that octopi have. You stick to things. I think a lot of the platforming is you sort of... So there's a little bit of like this stealth element to it, but then there's also the kind of precision platforming element to it as well. I think the gist of the story is that you are dropped into a like food processing area, and you're just trying to escape from that kind of thing. It seems fun. It seems a little, tongue-in-cheek. It's still kind of nuts that it's a Konami game. Like a brand new IP from Konami is a bit strange. But cool. Good for them. 2025 for that one. We don't really know when exactly. Dave the Diver is getting a crossover with Like a Dragon. So Kasuga Ichiban, the current main character of the Like a Dragon series, is going to join Dave the Diver for some crossover shenanigans. And it does seem like there's a bit of a Streets of Rage Double Dragon mode coming to Dave the Diver that's going to feature the Like a Dragon, the Yakuza guys. And then the remaster nobody really wanted. Everybody wanted the Bloodborne remaster, but they didn't get it. They're getting the Days Gone remaster instead. Why? I don't know, considering Sony themselves have publicly stated that there's no plans to continue the series or anything like that. So why they felt it needed the remaster treatment, I don't know, but whatever. Anyway, the remaster treatment for this is PS5 Pro stuff. I think it's going to add VRR to it as well. And then there's a couple of like new content packs coming to it as well. So there's going to be a Horde mode DLC. So by Horde mode, I mean there's a Horde mechanic in the original game, where there's like lots of these freakers, as they're called in the game, zombies. Just chasing you around an environment. There's a lot of hazards. There's a lot of things that can stall you and get you caught up, and then get you caught by the Horde, and so on and so forth. But that's kind of one of the best parts of the game, to be honest. Is just being chased by all of these things, and you've got like this running battle with them, because you can't really stay put for very long, because they will catch you and overwhelm you. So it's I did feel like that was the best part, but the game takes far too long to get to it, was my opinion of it. Anyway, so a couple of things added there. You can see there's a permadeath for a very long game. I don't know about that. Okay. Photo mode, cool. Accessibility modes, speedrun mode. There's a bunch of different modes. But this Horde Assault thing is probably the big one. It's not clear if this is part of the main game or if it's its own separate thing. I'd imagine it's its own separate thing. On top of that, there's a bunch of visual improvements and stuff like that. Anyway, end of April, Days Gone Remastered. It's also doing the typical Sony thing where if you already own it, you got to pay $10 to get the additional one. There's also the kind of annoying aspect to it is the PS5 Pro enhancements. If you already owned the game on disc, the PS5 Pro doesn't by default come with a disc tray. And getting the disc tray has been a little bit difficult because it's almost out of stock all the time. So there's a bit of an annoyance that they'd effectively, even though they own the disc, because they can't put the disc in to prove that they own it and do the upgrade thing, they would effectively have to pay the full price again. Which is pretty shit. I mean, Sony asking you to pay the full price for a game you've already bought that are like very small improvements is already shit in the first place. But whatever. Anyway, and also on top of that, it's the remaster nobody wanted. Everybody wanted Bloodborne and they didn't get it. Anyway, Digimon Story Time Stranger is a new Digimon game. I did think it was kind of funny because the initial trailer for it. Now, to be fair, I'm not in on Digimon stuff, so I didn't get it at all at the beginning. I just saw, wow, that's a big fucking apocalyptic event right there. And then they start talking about these kind of events happening in different timelines and different parallel universes and so on and so forth. And I probably should have clued in that this was maybe not as dire as it sounded because it's a very nice, lush visuals and so on. Somewhat cartoonish visuals that maybe it's not as serious as you might be thinking. But it certainly seemed like it was very dire events, and then there's like, no, it's Digimon. It's okay. Anyway, it's Digimon RPG. I think if you played some of them in the past, you probably know what you're getting. I haven't, so I have no idea. 2025 for that. Not exactly sure when. Directive 8020 also now has a release date, the 2nd of October. It's coming out in the spooky month. That does mark like a fairly significant amount of time between this game and the last Dark Pictures games. It's still not clear if they're still doing like a seasonal thing. Like the idea was they would make like small games, but they put them out relatively quickly between each other. And that would amount to a sequel, or not a sequel. That would amount to like a season of the Dark Pictures, and then season 2 was meant to start with Directive 8020, but it's been like 3 years now since The Devil in Me, something like that. I don't know. Time is a construct, but whatever. It also seems like this is a fairly significant evolution on the choose your own adventure type things that the Dark Pictures games have been known for. There's an awful lot more actual gameplay involved here. It doesn't look like it's all quick time events and choosing paths and whatever. There is like a stealth element, there's inventory management and stuff like that, so it's questionable if it really belongs in the same universe. Anyway, it does look like they're going for The Thing / Sunshine. It's some kind of like take those two stories and smash them together. That seems to be what they're going for. Anyway, we'll see how that works out. 2nd of October. Dreams of Another. This is from Q Games and Pixel Junk. They tend to make some pretty weird games. They tend to make interesting, if not always good, games. But anyway. So this is going to be coming to PSVR 2 as well as PS5. So there's a flat and a VR version of it. Dreams of Another is kind of interesting in that it's sort of a reverse shooter. So the idea is that the overarching artistic view of the game is that destruction can bring about creation, kind of thing. Is that it's only by destroying something can you find a way to rebuild it or a way to build something new out of it. So the idea is you're going to shoot these little like pixel light things and the more of them you shoot, and etc., etc., it's gonna like form the environment around you. So it's sort of like a reverse shooter. I guess it's got a little bit of like Unfinished Swan to it as well, a little bit, in that you'd have to like throw out paint in Unfinished Swan to figure out the environment. Even slap the wig right off a clown. Anyway, that's Dreams of Another. I don't really know what to make of it right now. I don't think it has a release date or anything like that just yet. Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic is another like security breach style Five Nights at Freddy's, where you're actually walking around and in the environment. It's not just sitting in the security booth opening and closing doors and stuff like that, but it's another one of those. The Mimic this time around is an endoskeleton that can inhabit any toy or any body thing, animatronic, whatever. So I think the idea here is that not every like discarded body type you come across can at any point become the Mimic thing. That's kind of what they're going for. Hell Is Us, also getting a release date, 4th of September. I think... no, it is definitely 4th of September. I think Elias Tfexis is playing the main role. I'm not sure if we had heard the main character's voice before now. But it definitely sounds like him. He played Adam Jensen in the Deus Ex, Human Revolution, Mankind Divided. And I also think the art director for Hell Is Us is also Deus Ex Human Revolution's art director. So it's interesting to have the two of them back in. I'm actually kind of curious how much of the team is involved in Hell Is Us. We did get to see a little bit more of it, and it does very much have the kind of Dark Souls, but make it a little bit sci-fi and a little bit kind of otherworldly elements to it. Anyway, so September... What did that say? Did that say September 24th? I thought it was 4th. No, September 4th. Okay, I can't read. Never mind. That's Hell Is Us. Lies of P Overture. So this is DLC for Lies of P. This is going to be doing... in the same way Lies of P kind of somewhat copied From Software's homework. They're kind of going to copy their homework for the DLC as well. It's going to take you to a completely different area, different timeline, and so on. You're going back in time to before the city was destroyed. And I think it's basically on the eve of the puppets revolution, the puppet riot, or whatever it's called. I haven't played Lies of P. I'm not sure what it's actually called. But you're going to be taken to like a frozen area. So different costumes, different animals, different monsters, different bosses, etc., etc. Different weapon types and what have you. Anyway, more Lies of P. There's no release date for it yet, but I think it's this year at some point. Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. This was mostly showing up to tell you that the game is going to be out really soon, next week, I think. And that it is getting a demo. At the time State of Play came out, was Wednesday evening, I think. So they were announcing that a demo would be available on the Friday. So if you're watching this, the demo's already there. Lost Soul Aside finally has a release date 10 years after being announced. So 30th of May. You'll be able to play Lost Soul Aside. If you don't remember, this was a game that a solo developer put out a kind of proof of concept kind of thing of what Final Fantasy Versus 13 would have looked like if it was if they had followed the trailer that came out for it at the time. Final Fantasy Versus 13 went through a whole bunch of different development hells and ended up becoming Final Fantasy 15 and didn't quite match the same vibe as Final Fantasy Versus 13. But anyway, when it was kind of shown off, Sony picked them up on it and were like, hey, do you want to make like the full game, etc. And they got a larger development team involved, and now this is the outcome for it. So 30th of May, plays like Devil May Cry by the looks of it. There's a lot of Devil May Cry in there. There's a lot of style, there's a lot of flair. How much of that was actual gameplay, I don't know. I guess we'll figure out at the time. After Lost Soul aside, Metal Eden. So Metal Eden, 6th of May. This is from the same team behind Ruiner, which we have played on the channel before. So this is Rycon Games. Metal Eden, it's a first-person, pretty fast-paced shooter. It does look like it's like a campaign. It's not like a multiplayer thing. It's its own first-person fucking shooter campaign. How long has it been since one of those has happened? But the gist of it is core ripping. So the idea is you do enough damage to an enemy where you can do a brutal kill on them, effectively like Doom. But the core ripping, I think, gives you back health, gives you back ammo, gives you back resources and stuff like that. So it is meant to be very fast-paced. It's not a cover-type shooter. You're meant to get out there and fight. Some of the cutscenes suggest that it's possibly a roguelike element to it, but I don't think so. But not entirely clear just yet. But either way, it does look very nice, very fluid, and just different, I guess, than the kind of first-person shooters we've been seeing lately. So yeah, looking forward to seeing more of that. And also, Ruiner was just a very, very good isometric shooter. It's very hard, so I'd imagine Metal Eden will also be very difficult. Hopefully not too difficult, because Ruiner was a little bit on the cusp of being a little too difficult for me. Anyway, that's Metal Eden. Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. So this was... the trailer was leaked a while ago. Maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago at this point. So we kind of sort of already knew the release date. We were really just waiting for confirmation. So 28th of August is indeed the correct release date. It's still looking amazing. It really does seem like Konami just went, what are the parts of Snake Eater that didn't quite age well? Okay, let's just fix them, and then everything that's still okay, we'll leave it alone and just make it look better. And that really seems to be what they've done here, because it still looks incredibly good. A lot of this trailer is showing off the bosses that you might encounter. And then really interestingly, at the end, they are going to bring back the Ape Escape crossover. So Snake versus Monkey, which is the kind of thing where you would go into some of the maps from Snake Eater, but they would also have some of the Ape Escape monkeys, apes. It was never clear if they were apes or monkeys. Anyway, dotted around the map somewhere, and you'd have to try to capture them. That was the kind of thing. Kind of interestingly, Ape Escape is obviously a Sony property, and Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater is coming out on Xbox as well. So there was a question on whether the Ape Escape mode would make its way to Xbox too, because Sony licensing and so on. It's not. So the Xbox version of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater won't have the Snake versus Monkey mode. It will instead have Snake versus Bomberman. It's not clear if it's going to play the exact same and they're just going to swap out the monkeys for Bombermen? Bomber people? I don't know. Or if it's just going to be a completely different thing all by itself. We don't know. There is a trailer of Xbox out there that just says Bomberman will be involved. But how it actually plays, we don't know yet. Mind's Eye. So Mind's Eye had two trailers. I'm just going to show you the gameplay one. It is slated for this summer at some point. So Mind's Eye is from... the fuck is the name of the developer? I don't remember the name. There it is. Build a Rocket Boy. Build a Rocket Boy are former GTA people, former Rockstar people. They're the people working on the Everywhere platform, which is meant to be this sort of group hub thing that will have a bunch of shared games, and the games will have shared assets, and you're meant to be able to take assets from one game and put them in another game and mix and match and stuff like that. It's pretty ambitious. This is one of the first games, I think. It's a pretty basic third-person shooter, which is probably fine for the kind of platform they're looking to build for Everywhere. Just make a couple of basic things, and then people can like mix and match things to make it a little bit more interesting. Certainly looks very pretty. I think the idea, if you like, for the story behind Mind's Eye is that he's got some sort of technology embedded in his neck, but it's taken some of his memories away or something. I don't know. It was kind of hard to follow, to be honest. But yeah, somewhere at some stage, it's meant to... So, actually, I'll go back there a second. So, at the end of it, it's kind of telling you all the different platforms it's going to release on. And then one of them you can see there at the bottom. So it's coming to PlayStation, obviously. It's at the State of Play. but it's also coming to everywhere. It's still not clear if everywhere is going to be its own living online hub thing. Is it going to be its own game and then you buy games through the Everywhere app or something like that? Like, we still don't really know how it's going to work. There is an alpha, I think, of Everywhere out there right now. That's just like the building component of Everywhere, where you take assets and just, cobble them together to make a game out of it. But it's like heavily under NDA, so I don't think anybody's seen any of the output from it. So yeah, how this works with a game as well, we don't really know yet, but it will be interesting to see how it turns out. Monster Hunter Wilds, again, just reminding people it's coming out soon, end of February, 28th. Onimusha got a little bit more news. It's kind of weird why they didn't do this at the Capcom Spotlight, which was like last week. Like, why they didn't put those trailers out there. Maybe Sony wanted to do it themselves, I don't know. In that case, why Capcom? I guess Capcom wanted to get out ahead of it. I don't know. Anyway, we know a little bit more about the story. Now, I said last week, when we were talking about the Capcom thing, that maybe they weren't going to use Samanosuke Akechi, the main character of Onimusha 1, Onimusha 3, and Jubei Yagyu, Onimusha 2, that they weren't going to use them because they'd have to pay licensing fees for the actor. And now I look like an idiot, because it is still another recognizable actor. Now, I don't know who they are. And to be fair, I didn't know who the two actors in play Samanosuke and Jubei Yagyu, but they're well known in Japan. This particular actor is deceased as well, which has its own kind of ethical thing of should you really be allowed to use their likeness. The actor who played Jubei in Onimusha 2, their face also, they were dead a long while ago. When Onimusha 2 was released. So again, it's questionable of whether or not you really should have been using their likeness, but whatever. We're getting a little bit more gameplay. We will be playing, which is really interesting, Miyamoto Musashi. Miyamoto Musashi, during the Edo period, was considered the greatest swordsman in Japan. That may have been his own moniker, self-titled or whatever. Certainly from historical books, it seems at the very least he was very, very good. Probably better known for his dual wielding than anything else. As you can see here, there's not a lot of dual wielding going on, so we don't know if that will be put into it. But there is some dual wielding at one point. There, for instance. That is a different weapon, though, clearly. Anyway, you are seeing a lot more of the game. It's not really going to play like a Souls type thing. They did very clearly say they didn't want it to be like a fuck you really hard type game. They don't want it to be that. Anyway. So that's a bit more of Way of the Sword. We're still talking 2026. No, it's still a while off. Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny. Now we did get a little bit more looking at the remaster here. So it does have a release date, 26th of May. Again, why Capcom didn't just say it had a release date, I don't know. Anyway, get a little bit look at it now. The CG obviously looks a bit rough, and the characters themselves stand out a little bit from the background. Remember, this would have been built on kind of the Resident Evil style engine, so they were going for, painted backgrounds and 3D models, which is Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, effectively. They hadn't moved over to like Code Veronica and stuff like that yet. So that's why they look like they stand out a little bit too much. But either way, Onimusha 2 is a very good game, and I'm glad it's getting a remaster, because I'm really interested to play it again. So 23rd of May for Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny, and just 2026 for Onimusha Way of the Sword. They also reveal what the PlayStation Plus game catalog refresh for this month will be. I will talk about that later in the monthly games section. Saros was actually the game that wrapped up the state of play. This was their one more thing kind of thing. So this is from Housemarque. You might know Housemarque best for Returnal, or a bunch of other games that they've made. And I was trying to think of it earlier on whether or not Housemarque have ever made a sequel. And you could you can say all of the Super Stardust games maybe are sequels to each other, I guess. I kind of feel like they're just different versions of the same game or whatever. But I really don't think they have ever made just a 2. I don't think they've had a 2 in their title before. Certainly this... Anyway, Saros, there's no gameplay yet to show it. This is a planet that is infinitely changing and an enemy that is infinitely adaptable and so on and so forth. It's effectively Returnal 2. Every time I die, I get stronger. I think the character actually says it in the trailer. Like, it's very much meant to be... it's Returnal again, but they're just not calling it Returnal 2. Whether it's set in the same universe or anything like that, I don't know. The medallion kind of reminds me of Prince of Persia, which is kind of... I'm curious if it does have that sort of time rewinding element to it. I doubt it, but it'd be interesting if it does. Anyway, it's going to be your... I feel like it's just going to be Returnal again. And that's fine, because it was a very good game. Anyway, that's Saros. 2026 for that one as well. This is the one that actually launched the State of Play. So this is Shinobi Art of Vengeance, coming out 29th of August. So right after Metal Gear Solid Delta. It looks gorgeous. So it's going to be playing like the old school side-scrolling Shinobi games. There hasn't been a new Shinobi game in, I think, fucking years at this point. I don't think there was a PS4 version. In fact, I don't think there was a PS3 Shinobi. I'm not sure. The last one I remember is just Shinobi on the PS2, which was a 3D thing, and you had the sword that was slowly killing you over time, and it really felt more like it was a time attack game. That's kind of why I didn't really like it that much. Anyway, this looks very pretty. This is from the same developers who made Streets of Rage 4. So that's why it looks so good. And Streets of Rage 4, it was a very, very good game. So I'm definitely hyped for Shinobi Art of Shadow, or whatever it's called. Art of Vengeance? What was it called? Shinobi Art of something, anyway. And then we also have the like Ninja Gaiden Rage bound, something like that. Art of Vengeance. So we got like it's the year of the ninja. Absolutely. Assassin's Creed Shadows, Year of the Ninja. Ninja Gaiden, Year of the Ninja. Something, something, something. Anyway, 29th of August for that one. Sonic Racing, Crossworlds. I'm just gonna show you the trailer because it is showing off something interesting. We don't have a release date for it yet. So, Sonic Racing is Mario Kart, but Sonic characters. I'm sure that is doing a disservice for people who are big fans of the Sonic Racing thing, but that is effectively what it is. They put Sonic in a car to make it fair for everybody else, otherwise he'd just win every race. Anyway, what's interesting is the Crossworlds thing. So it looks like at any point in the race, or maybe it's at specific points in the race, I don't know, portals open up. And I would imagine everyone is forced into the portal, just to make the race make any sense whatsoever. Or maybe the person at the front of the track chooses which portal they go through. But it looks like you're then just dropped into a different course. You know, part of a different course. And whether or not that is randomized or it's always the same on every track, whether that's a power-up, is something you pick up, like a racer can pick up on something like that, I don't know. To try to keep everybody together and have it be a race, it feels like you would have to force everybody in. So how they're going to make that work, I don't know, but it's really interesting. And it seems like you're almost certainly going to need an SSD to make it work as well. If it's truly random, you'll definitely need an SSD. If it's actually predetermined which courses get mixed and matched with which course, then probably not. But anyway, it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting gimmick. Split Fiction was mostly just to give you a little bit more of the story, but we didn't really learn anything new there. Splitgate 2 is getting an alpha at the end of February. 27th of February, there'll be an alpha for Splitgate 2. If you're not familiar with Splitgate, it is an arena shooter that crosses Portal with guns, effectively. Stellar Blade is getting a crossover with Nike, whatever you call it, Goddess of Victory. That's the mobile game where all the anime girls have huge arses. Midnight Walk we saw a little bit more of. So 8th of May, release date for Midnight Walk. This is another game that is also getting a VR version. It does feel like it is an escort mission, the game, because it seems like you are escorting this little guy who's the last source of fire or source of light or whatever in this world. We did get a little intro from the developers, and they were showing off that every asset in the game is handmade. Like it's like they have like claymation models of them, and those are like photogrammatically. I think that's the word, put into the game, which I have talked about a lot in other games that do something similar, and I always think it just makes for really interesting and very highly detailed models. But yeah, it does feel like it is both a stealth game, an escort simulator, and a bunch of other stuff all at once. So how exactly fun it will be to play, I don't know. Also, that thing screaming in your face in VR, no thanks. I mean, some thanks, but also no thanks. Tides of Annihilation. So this one kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think anyone was really talking about it at all. I don't think we knew anything about it in the first place. Eclipse Glow Studio is a new name to me. I don't think they've worked on anything else, so this might be their debut title. So Tides of Annihilation is a kind of modern day crossover with like fantasy Arthurian legend. So it's something. The Knights of the Round Table have fallen. Something. It's up to you now to fix things. Something. It sure looks like it plays an awful lot like Devil May Cry. And there's a lot of Devil May Cry there. There's a lot of Darksiders. There's a lot of the original God of War type games. Really interesting enemy design. The knights and what have you they look really cool. There is a longer trailer out there that shows off gameplay, so I'm just gonna quickly swap to that. So there's a 11, almost 12-minute video here that's all gameplay. So you get a little bit of it just traversing the small worlds. It just very much reminds me of like old PS2, PS3 slash 'em up type games, like Devil May Cry, like God of War, and so on. I'll get into a bit of the combat. You can see how the combat plays out. Let's skip ahead here a little bit. So you can see, all right, so top left corner, there's these 3 portraits that you swap between, and they seem to be... They're kind of like support characters, I guess is the way to put it, but I just kind of view them as different weapons. I think that's just the easiest way to look at them. You've got the fire guy, and then you've got the ice knight woman, and then I don't know what the third one is supposed to be. But they all clearly have different abilities, different things associated with them. There's this archery type one as well. I'm not sure. They seem to be just a constant one, because it doesn't look like they have an avatar. Or that's the bottom one, possibly. I'm not sure. Anyway, you can clearly mix and match between them. There doesn't appear to be a cooldown thing on their abilities and stuff like that. It does very much remind me of Devil May Cry a lot. Just swapping between these different weapons all at once, getting your combos up. There's no combo meter. There's no, smoking sexy style or anything like that going on here. What is also very telling is we do have this, Rage of Olympus God of War thing, superpower fuck you move. It is very much going for that. And I, for one, welcome our new slash 'em up overlords. Anyway, there's a much lengthier video there. There's a full-on boss fight near the end. It's pretty cool. Encourage you to give that one a look. Anyway, that's Tides of Annihilation. No release date for it at all yet. Whether it's this year or next year. I feel like it's probably this year because it looks like it's pretty far along. It's also the main character, Gwendolyn, appears to be voiced by Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3. Certainly sounds a lot like her. I haven't confirmed that, but it definitely sounds like her. Warriors Abyss. Warriors Abyss is a roguelike version of Dynasty Warriors, essentially. So it's played from an isometric viewpoint rather than the typical kind of over-the-shoulder view that you would have. Not even over-the-shoulder view, just third person, just much closer in. This is clearly an isometric view. But it is the Dynasty Warriors you versus millions of enemies all at once. There is a rogue element to it. Kill, die, repeat, and so on. That kind of thing. Anyway. That is out pretty soon, I think. We don't have the release date for it here, but I think it's out pretty soon. And then the last thing was this thing about wrestling, but they're effectively taking the Street Fighter 6 World Tour mode and just bringing it to the WWE games. Oh yeah, that was That was the Xbox thing that they're going to be using Bomberman instead of Ape Escape. Anyway, those are the updates for State of Play, but there were some updates outside of State of Play. So Elden Ring Night Rain does now have an official release date. It's May at some point. I forget when exactly. There's a network test ongoing this weekend, the weekend that I'm recording this, or streaming this. Broadcasting? Whatever. From what I've heard, it's not going great. There's a lot of people really interested in playing the game, I guess. So the servers are straining a little bit. From small bits that I've seen of people who have managed to get in and play it, they've really been enjoying it. I think it's going to be a pretty big deal. We've seen a couple of updates on their Steam page that have then been removed and then put back and then been removed. But it does look like there's going to be a pretty hefty DLC thing for Night Rain. How much of that will be free DLC or whatever, but adding like bosses from other From Software Souls type games. 30th of May. Anyway, so that's Night Rain. Expelled. So Expelled is this next game from Inkle. Expelled is going to be in... It's kind of like an Overboard 2 in a way. So if you don't remember, Overboard is another game from Inkle where... It's almost a choose your own adventure kind of thing, but the idea is you've thrown your husband overboard and you have like a couple of days or something on the cruise ship to cover it up or pin the blame on somebody else or such and such, so that when the cruise liner pulls in, you don't get arrested. The idea with Expelled is let's take that same idea but put it in a boarding school for girls. So that's the kind of deal with that. Anyway, 12th of March for that one. Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. This was from a level 5 update, and this is a lengthy enough 5-minute trailer. Kind of just going over how the game works, but it is like a slow life RPG. So think Stardew Valleys, think Animal Crossing, that kind of thing. Story-wise, there is a kind of time jumping element. You're going back in time 1,000 years to figure out why the island is in ruins and stuff like that. But otherwise, you're just building your little village and, you know, doing your little jobs and making things look nice and so on and so forth. It looks cute. I like the vibe of it. I think it's April is its release date. No, never mind. Everything, just fucking put everything out in May, I guess, right? 21st of May instead. Fantasy Life I. And then Centum. So Centum, I'm not entirely sure what the game is. I think it is a point-and-click adventure thing, but like very strong horror elements to it. Art design is pretty fucking creepy as well on top of that. Anyway, it does have a release date. I don't remember what it is. March 11th. Okay, 11th of March for Centum. Moving on. All right, so I did say that Sony were talking about the PlayStation Plus catalog refresh for February. Okay, so before they get into that, they were also quick to point out that there are some games that are coming day one to the PlayStation Plus catalog. So Blueprints is coming in spring. There's not a whole lot of time left in spring. It's basically next month, effectively. Or April, I guess, as well. I don't know. What are the seasons anymore? Who knows? Climate change changes everything. Blueprints is an interesting kind of puzzle game where you're given a limited number of days to find a secret room in the house, but the house changes every day. So it's sort of like a deck builder, and it's sort of like a mystery puzzle adventure thing. It's really interesting. And then the other game coming in summer is Abiotic Factor, which is a sort of it's hard to explain now. It's kind of like a base builder, but also a like shooter. It's got a little bit of Deep Rock Galactic going on. Anyway, there's that. But speaking of February instead, so Star Wars Jedi Survivor is the sequel to Fallen Order. Pretty good Star Wars game. Topspin 2K25. Which I think is a... No, this would have been last year's tennis game. It seems cheating to have this many rackets. I feel like you're only meant to have one, but anyway, it's a tennis game. Lost Records Bloom and Rage Tape 1 is this kind of next thing from the Life is Strange developer. Tape 1 is because it's an episodic game. I'm not sure how many tapes it comes in. It's got a little bit of the Goonies vibe to it, and then there's a fair bit of like Oxenfree, a little bit to the story. It's also not clear if the other tapes will be on PlayStation Plus or if it's just the first one. Saga Frontier Remastered is a remaster of Saga Frontier, 1998 RPG. It was very good, and the remaster is also pretty good too. Somerville, we played a little bit of it on the channel. I enjoyed it for the most part, but I did think it was not quite as good as some of the previous games that this creator has made. They were also responsible for Limbo and Inside, and Somerville just doesn't match those two. Interestingly, though, the developer Jumpship, who made Somerville, they did sell the studio to Thunderful in 2022. Thunderful have been going through it, is probably a way to put it, for the last while, and have sold Jumpship back to its original creator. So that's interesting in that they're fully independent again. What's probably less great news is that the co-creator, or the co-founder and the original development team for Somerville were laid off in the meantime. So they kind of just own the name Jumpship at this point, rather than anything else. Tin Hearts is a PSVR game that's kind of Lemmings, effectively, but they're toy soldiers instead. Mordhau is a big, like, 32 versus 32 melee medieval battling type thing. Premium side of things, Patapon 3 is a really cool rhythm action game that was originally on the PS Vita, or the PS... was it PSP? No, it was PSP, yeah, that old. Okay. But yeah, this is very good. Dropship United Peace Force, I am not familiar with. I think it's a PS2 title, but I don't remember it that well either. I don't remember it at all, let's be clear. Also on the state of play, when they were talking about Blueprints and Abiotic Factor, they were talking about some other classics that are going to be coming to the catalog at some point. So they are going to be bringing the first 3 Armored Core games to the PlayStation Plus catalog at some stage as well. I think Armored Core 2 was good. I'm not sure about Armored Core 1 and 3, but I think Armored Core 2 was considered pretty good at the time. And then obviously Armored Core 6 is being made by, you know, the Soulsy guys now at this point. It'd be good to catch up on it, but what are they going to do about Armored Core 4 and 5? I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? You can play Avowed if you own an Xbox or a PC. So Avowed from Obsidian, it's a little bit Skyrim, but not quite. There's a little bit more to it than that, and a little bit less to it than that. What I've seen from reviews, it's been pretty well received. There's a lot of customization for your characters, a lot of different ways to approach different encounters and stuff like that. It is based on the Pillars of Eternity universe, so there's a lot of stuff you could have done in Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. It is set between those two games, so if you played either of them, you might have an idea of what stage the universe is in at this moment in time. Anyway, that's Avowed. And we have Urban Myth Dissolution Center. This is a kind of visual novel that's kind of taking like urban myths, and the idea is for you to either prevent them from killing people, or to undo them entirely, or to just ignore them as well if you want. From what I've seen, again, from reviews, is that it's a bit slow, from what I've heard. It's a bit slow to get to like the meat of the game. And maybe the visual novel stuff kind of interferes a little bit too much. That's what I've heard from it. Whether that's true or whether you'll feel the same when you play it, I don't know. Moving on, Afterlove EP is a rhythm game that is kind of... Your main character has just gone through... they've just lost their wife, fiance, love of their life, whoever it is. They're going through obviously a massive amount of grief, depression, and so on, but they also have to put an EP together at the same time. So it's, you know, trying to get that motivation, trying to get the spark back when you've, you know, massively going through grief and so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a heavy game, I guess, but it does have a musical like rhythm vibe to it as well. The gameplay is part visual novel and then part like Guitar Hero kind of thing. And then the Tomb Raider 4 to 6 remastered. So we already had the Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 remastered. This is the 4, 5, and 6 remasters instead. The developers were in the position that they were just going to remaster 4, but it felt a bit mean to not also do 5 and 6. 5 and 6 are not particularly well remembered by everybody. It seems like 4 is probably the more... Of the 3 of them, 4 is probably the one more people want to play. But I do think it is important that we also preserve and make available the bad games. And maybe redeem them, if possible. Maybe they weren't as bad as everyone thought it was going to be. I don't know. I think Angel of Darkness is still bad. But anyway, you could try it out for yourself if Angel of Darkness is really so bad that it, ruined Tomb Raider for a very long time. You can make your decision around that. Unfortunately, though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. And the worst part of that video game industry, Bobby Kotick. Right. Oh, this is cold. This is cold and gross now. This is what I get for trying to drink all of it at once. And it's coffee. So that's gonna stain. Fuck you, Bobby. You ruined this for me. Right, anyway. We'll keep going. Fuck's sake. Right. So Bobby Kotick appeared on a podcast this week for Kleiner Perkins. Probably tell you all you need to know about how this podcast went. Kleiner Perkins, if you're not familiar, are a venture capital group. Their podcast is called something stupid. I can't remember what it is. Grip, I think is what it's called. Something like that. Anyway, he appeared on it. He was talking about a bunch of things like what it was like to deal with John Riccitiello at EA when they were competitors at a time. And he was saying that John Riccitiello was so bad at his job that he would have paid to keep him there. And I mean, he was very, very bad at his job. Anyway, a couple of other things you're talking about, but one that stood out as pretty bad was he was trying to say that that Activision was targeted by the communication workers of America for all their various lawsuits, talking about sexual harassment, toxic workplace, all of that they were deliberately targeted by the union to try to drum up union membership, which is a pretty shitty thing to say, Bobby. A number of fake lawsuits and saying all these things were false and so on and so forth. Anyway, CWA spokesperson came back to say that in 2021, Activision agreed to an $18 million settlement following a lawsuit that Activision had sexually harassed and discriminated against its workforce. Bobby Kotick himself apologized in his own press release for the inappropriate conduct that happened under his watch. Which one? Who's lying now, Bobby? Anyway, Activision also agreed to provide anti-harassment and anti-discrimination training. This was in 2022. Then in 2023, Activision reached a $54 million settlement with the California Civil Rights Department for discrimination against women in the workplace for pay inequalities, and so on and so forth. So it's like, Bobby, there's quite clear legal precedent for you being a shithead. Anyway, they were quick to point out, CWA were quick to point out, but it's important to point out that state departments never did find independent investigations substantiated any allegations that Bobby himself was responsible for any of these sexual harassment stuff or systemic sexual harassment at Activision. But they found enough that Activision decided to settle it. So anyway, Bobby Kotick's comments on the podcast uplifting billionaires are both insulting to the Activision workers who spoke out about the harassment they faced and also unsurprising. Fortunately for workers, Kotick is gone. Thousands of workers have organized unions with CWA without intimidation or interference and now have a voice at work. Good stuff. The rest of this article talks about how workers in Activision, well before the CWA got involved, were still calling for Kotick to be ousted, effectively. So him saying that the whole harassment thing was just the CWA trying to drum up union membership is that these problems were brought to him way before unionization efforts. So the last article was addressing CWA's response. This is addressing a Better ABK's response, who are the employee activism group inside Activision. So the executives of our company did not protect us and often made the situation worse or directly perpetuated the harm. The trauma, discrimination, and abuse that our co-workers and former co-workers endured is not fake or a plan to drive union membership. Our unions were born from the very real and harmful ways executives reacted when made aware of these situations. It's pointed out here, multiple US government agencies came down on effectively the side of the CWA. Anyway, a common misinformation tactic used by companies during a union campaign is to assert that a union is a third party that comes in and then makes changes, which is what Bobby is saying, that the CWA came in, drummed up a bunch of bullshit to try to get union membership. A better ABK are basically saying this is not true. The workers are the union. We are not a third party looking for companies to prey on, which is very, very much what Activision did and still do. We are workers with a vested interest in making our company the best it can be. So again, fully refuting what Bobby is trying to claim here. Valentine Powell, former senior UA engineer, who was pretty vocal about how Bobby was bad for the Activision company in general. They were part of a lot of the beginning of employee activism, well before unions got involved. This was years before unionization was ever discussed. We gathered a list of about 50 ways people wanted to improve salary and promotions, refined that list down to 10 bullets with the help of over 100 employees across all of Blizzard. We presented our list and were told by leadership, no. Just no. No attempt to negotiate it, no attempt to look into like a heavily whittled down list or anything like that. After a couple of months of us being loud, Activision Blizzard stopped being nice about it, especially Kotick. I was the one who started the petition to remove Bobby Kotick as CEO. I was the first name on the list, and that petition had nothing to do with the CWA. Again, this wasn't the union coming in, trying to drum up membership. These issues were here long before them. Bobby Kotick is trying to paint a false narrative, but it's unsurprising. He refused to listen to us for years when we tried to handle this stuff without unionization, and only listened once we actually started unionizing, which should be your wake-up call. That if you aren't part of a union, you maybe should be. Alright, moving on. Speaking of, if you're not part of a union, you probably should be. Unity continues mass layoffs with abrupt communications and 5 a.m. emails. So Unity continues to be going through it. So you may recall last year, 2 years ago maybe at this point, John Riccitiello, remember him? We were talking about him just earlier, how he was a terrible CEO for EA. Turns out, terrible CEO for Unity as well. He's the guy who said, hey, every install of Unity you need to now pay us for. Remember that guy? And he wanted to make it retroactive and everything. Fucking tanked Unity for a long time. Got a lot of developers to jump off the engine and so on and so forth. Anyway, he got pushed out. But Unity are still hemorrhaging money effectively because of it. Anyway, Unity has spent $205 million laying off 25% of its workforce this fiscal year, and it looks like the company isn't finished yet. I feel like, how much would they have spent keeping the 25%? Would it have been more than $205 million? I don't think so. Okay, so a lot of this is cobbled together from various forum posts, LinkedIn updates, that kind of thing. Unity itself has not come out with an official response. The behavior package tech lead, Shanine Nishri, stated that their entire team had been cut. The behavior package in Unity is, it's effectively a way to design AI for your NPC characters, for stuff for like, what do they do when this happens? What do they do when this thing happens? What do they do by default if none of those things happens, and so on? Their behavior in the environment, right? That's why it's called behavior. Shanine Nishri created this tool on their own personal time before it evolved into a core Unity product. Unity took it over and has now laid them off. Just never do anything for your company, I guess, because they just won't have your back. Nishri has asked Unity to make the thing open source, but it's not going to happen. Anyway, lead game designer Andre de Miranda Cardosa also explained that they had been impacted by a layoff that occurred suddenly. There are even more testimonies like this one from the Unity senior technical artist Peter Rowe, who was eliminated via email at 5 a.m. on a Saturday. And the email came from a no reply thing at Unity, so that's good. Fucking automated emails. You don't even have the courtesy to call the guy, have a meeting with them. This is like being broken up with via text. Anyway, I want to call out the way Unity chose to communicate these layoffs. I've received a 5 a.m. email from a no reply informing me that my role was being eliminated and that I'd lose system access by the end of the day. It felt completely abrupt and impersonal. Unity must do better in how they treat their workers in hard times like this. But Unity would then probably make the argument that you're not a worker anymore, so we don't have to treat you well. Anyway, pretty shit. And it's probably why Unity is continuing to see developers jump to other platforms. Okay, now this time, Coffee. This time, you've gotten even colder and more disgusting. Cool. Alright. Didn't fucking spill it all over myself this time. Moving on. Alright. I'm talking about companies hemorrhaging money. How about a company that's actually making money? Alright, Remedy. Alan Wake 2 is finally profitable over a year after its release, says Remedy. So, it's finally started making a profit after it's surpassed 2 million in sales. As per Remedy's latest financial report, it started accruing royalty income around the end of last year. So it's effectively, it has recouped its development costs, any kind of marketing costs, and so on and so forth. So any money they make from it now is all profit, which is pretty good. The real question here is, so Alan Wake 2 didn't launch into Game Pass, didn't launch into PlayStation Plus, any of those kind of subscription services. It decided to go it the traditional way. Just put out a game people want and see how well it does. Seems like it's doing good for them. The question, because of how opaque a lot of developers are with their numbers and their sales figures and so on, we don't really know if that's good. Is it good that it's only making a profit now? A good thing? Or should it have been making a profit way earlier? Or is it like, is it doing like super well? They wouldn't expect it to be making a profit for another 2 years or something? Like, we don't know, really. But because Remedy are entirely independent, they are, in that case, entirely dependent on their sales. So if they are now, effectively, anyone who buys Alan Wake 2 at this point is directly just, you know, increasing their profit, and how much money they can then invest further into the company and making more games and so on and so forth. At least you know your money's not going to, like, EA or Microsoft or whoever, you know, people who really, really don't need the fucking money. Anyway, they attributed a lot of this to making it a digital release at the beginning, so they could do it a little bit cheaper. They didn't have to, you know, pay the expenses of getting a printed disc and then getting the plastic boxes and the shipping and all that stuff. Then there's the DLC that came out for the games that were pretty well received and so on. And then they did eventually do like a limited physical edition release for people who really just wanted the disc, make sure that they could play it forever. As well as a bunch of like quality of life things, the PS5 Pro patch, that kind of thing. So talking about what that money is going to be used for, there's FPC Firebreak is out some stage this year, which is a 3-person co-op thing. So I guess is a shooter that's sort of Lethal Company at the same time. The Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes are currently in full production. That is like a publisher deal with Rockstar, so they won't get all of that money. But then Control 2 will enter full production at the end of this month. So that's pretty good. We might actually see the game 2027, maybe, something like that. Anyway, moving on. That was the last of the good news. Embracer says gutting its business has created strong foundation for future value creation. Great, thanks. All it took was losing thousands of jobs. Thanks. So CEO Lars Wingefors says it's reassuring signs following the brutal restructuring effort of mass layoffs, shuttering multiple studios, cancelling of huge numbers of projects before splitting into 3 completely different companies. Cool. Good job, I guess. So we did see a net sales decline, but organic growth is up, whatever the fuck that means. Embracer has divested major subsidiaries, Saber Interactive and Gearbox Entertainment, which is alleged for why there's been a downturn, because they've effectively sold off 2 companies, or 2 developers that were making decent stuff. So they had Saber, Space Marine, Gearbox Entertainment obviously is Borderlands. Anyway, Some good news on their end of it is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is approaching about the 2 million sales mark, which is an especially strong performance. Now, I want to compare that with other companies saying that 1.5 million sales is poor performance. EA, Dragon Age Veilguard. That's how many that sold. That's apparently poor performance. But it's approaching 2 million, so we're not quite 2 million. That's an especially strong performance. In fact, it significantly outperformed their expectations of how well the game would sell. This is just to confirm that they don't know what they're talking about with sales expectations. Anyway, so yeah, they're starting to turn things around. Embracer is still massively in debt. Still massively in debt. So whatever they can do to turn that around, I guess, but they required them to, you know, they took out a big loan, expecting to get that loan repaid by like the Saudi prince, and he pulled out of the deal at the last minute. They have to pay back that loan to the banks now and various other investors who put it in, which resulted in them having to like cut and lay off and cancel a bunch of projects and so on. But the guy who did all of it is still at the top, so I mean, they're not going to really change their ways. Anyway, looking into the future, Embracer currently has 10 AAA titles in development. Do you think that's maybe a bit too many? I think maybe you're stretching yourselves a little bit. It doesn't, however, expect to release any notable PC or console games within the next financial year. How do you have 10 AAA titles in development and you're not going to release any of them? It's either they're not going to release any of these 10 AAA titles, or none of them are notable releases. There's an exciting slate of mid-sized releases. What the fuck is the difference between these? AAA titles, mid-sized releases. What the fuck is that? Anyway, we've got the Gothic 1 remake, we've got Reanimal. It's kind of like the Little Nightmares team, I think. I don't know what... Presumably Fellowship is a Lord of the Rings thing, but I don't remember a game just called Fellowship. So I don't know what that is. Deep Rock Galactic, Titan Quest 2. Are these not AAA titles? Is that what we're saying? We have 10 AAA titles and then these ones as well. Like... But they're not notable. The fuck are you talking about? Alright, anyway. Moving on. Valve bans forced in-game ads from all Steam titles. So... This is kind of interesting. So this isn't a new position for Valve. This has been their position for a while. This is kind of them just making the language in their terms of service clear on what they mean by like in-game ads and stuff like that. So Valve essentially, in their documentation, their Steamworks documentation stuff, refuses to sell any game that relies on in-game advertisement for its business model. So specifically, developers should not utilize paid advertising as a business model in their game, such as requiring players to watch or otherwise engage with advertising in order to play, gating gameplay behind advertising. If your game's business model relies on advertising on other platforms, you will need to remove those elements before shipping on Steam. So this is mostly targeting mobile game developers who are looking to port their game to PC. I'm sure you are familiar with the type of mobile games that either require you to watch ads to get more energy or get more gems or whatever bullshit it is, or just randomly drop an ad in front of you and you're forced to watch the whole thing. That has a timer that doesn't mean anything, and then has a close button that doesn't actually close anything, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you're very much aware of how shit that whole environment is, and this is basically Valve trying to say, yeah, we don't want any of that. You've now got enough imaginary energy to take 2 more turns at the game you wish you were allowed to enjoy. Like, there are a lot of those games that are actually fun, and I wouldn't mind paying an upfront price for if you would just fuck off with the energy system and the in-game ads and all of that stuff. But they won't, because they make more money doing it that way. Anyway, the moment you put a price on an unknown mobile game, it's doomed to obscurity. So this is the kind of issue with the mobile games environment, the mobile game industry as it was. So when it began, way back when the first iPhone, the long ago, in the before times, was forged from, you know, the foundations of Earth or something. Anyway, apps were 99 cent. And you never saw an app more than 99 cent. And it didn't matter what the app was. Didn't matter what it did. Didn't matter how complex it was and so on. Apple were just very much against anything being more than 99 cent. And that pretty much hamstrung like video game developers because they're not going to recoup your expenses with 99 cents. You know, it's just, you're not going to be able to do that. So to get around it, they instead made free games. They made the freemium model. And instead of you just paying 99 cents and you have the game forever, with no issue, you instead can have the game for free, but if you actually want to enjoy it, then you got to spend money. And there was no upper limit on what you could spend on that. You don't have the things that are in place now that are like, you know, being able to put a cap on how much you spend on in-game stuff, or industry bodies that are set up to like make sure you don't take the piss with your in-game monetization and stuff like that. This would have been like $20 to refill your energy kind of shit, you know? And people would pay it, which was the really terrible part. But anyway, a lot of it was because of Apple's just refusal to go above 99 cent, or refusal to advertise games, to promote games that were charging more than the 99 cent expectation. Android, in order to maintain, you know, marketability and competition, effectively played the same. It's 99 cent for that as well. But it basically hamstrung any kind of chunky, decent app that wasn't just a very basic fucking thing. That if they were ever going to make any money out of it, they would effectively have to do the ad-driven development, ad-driven, what do you call it? Monetization, effectively. So that's why we're in this position. That's the reason why. And it's because, as is said here, like the moment you put a price on an unknown mobile game, it's doomed to obscurity. They just won't market it. You just won't see it. It won't ever hit the top 10 lists. Because so many of those things are based on download count. And people don't download things that they have to pay for. You know, they're going to download the free thing. And then after that, it's done by like how many returning users you have. If the app is free, you're going to have way more returning users than a paid for app, and so on and so forth. So it's the whole ecosystem is set up for the freemium model rather than the premium model. Anyway, Valve just are trying to say no. Just none of that on Steam. Hopefully it stays that way. Moving on, Crysis 4 has been put on hold as Crytek says it is determined that layoffs are inevitable to move forward and parts with roughly 15% of its staff, so that's good. So Crytek are the latest company to push the big layoff button. 15% of its 400 staff, which means roughly about 60 people or so, are being let go. Studio revealed this, a statement on social media. It's not clear if they actually told their employees before they were doing that, but anyway. Like so many of our peers, we are not immune to the complex, unfavorable market dynamics that have hit our industry these past several years. So they've got their excuse in there. Everyone else is doing it, so we're going to do it too. The layoffs affect development teams and shared services. Don't know what that is. I don't know what shared services is. It's maybe community stuff, maybe it's marketing, asset creation, maybe something like that. I'm not entirely sure. This has not been an easy decision to make, as we deeply appreciate the hard work of our talented teams. After putting the development of the next Crysis game on hold in Q3 2024, I'm not sure we knew that at the time. I think now we're finding out that Crysis 4 is on hold. We have been trying to shift developers over to Hunt Showdown 1896, which is their latest game. Even after ongoing efforts to reduce costs and cut operating expenses, we have determined that layoffs are inevitable to move forward, but of course we're not laying ourselves off. We're going to lay off the developers who aren't responsible for this in any way. Anyway, Crytek will offer affected employees severance packages and career assistance services. Career assistance in an industry where everybody is getting laid off. Like, I don't know how much they can really assist there. Anyway, it's another one jumping on the layoffs bandwagon. And it is increasingly difficult to determine whether this is a case of we have cover because loads of companies are doing layoffs, so we're going to do layoffs too, or whether they genuinely need to do these layoffs because they can't afford to pay everybody. Like, we don't know is the problem here, because too many of them are doing it. Okay, so this is kind of a throwback to quite a while ago. Dark and Darker dev Iron Mace ordered to pay Nexon for trade secret infringement. So this is going back quite a while. It's 2022 or something like that. 2021 maybe. Anyway, either way, it's not a cut and dry victory for either side. So originally to 2021. Nexon and Iron Mace came to a lawsuit because... Sorry, Nexon filed a lawsuit against Iron Mace, alleging that the studio built Dark and Darker using source code and data for an in-development title codenamed Project P3. So the original developer would have been with Nexon for a while. They were working on Project P3. And the lawsuit alleges that before they jumped ship at Nexon and decided to set up Iron Mace, that they effectively leaked a lot of Project P3 out of the company to an offline server. Sorry, an offline off-site server, so they could access that and then continue development effectively under their own company. Which is a pretty shitty move. Nexon claimed the data was intentionally leaked by a former employee who went on to establish Iron Mace. So they were accused of effectively copyright infringement, trade secret infringement, and a bunch of other things. So the Seoul Central District Court in South Korea would have ruled that Dark and Darker didn't infringe on Nexon's copyright for Project P3. However, they were found to have committed trade secret infringement instead against Nexon. So what I'm assuming here is either Nexon weren't able to prove the copyright thing. Maybe they weren't able to prove it was leaked deliberately by ex-employee. Maybe the fact that Project P3 was never actually put out as its own product means that there's nothing to be copywritten, effectively. There's nothing for them to copy because the project was never actually published. Not clear. It's not clear where exactly they came down on that. The trade secret thing, I guess, is a little bit more cut and dry because trade secret doesn't require you to actually publish something. Not sure. Elsewhere in this kind of whole ordeal, Nexon did file like a cease and desist thing with Steam, with Epic, I think at the time as well, to effectively stop Dark and Darker from going into early access. It was eventually rescinded. They did eventually get onto Steam in like 2024. But yeah, so this thing has effectively come to an end. Both sides didn't really win. You could argue Nexon maybe did win because they got money out of it, but they weren't able to stop this game from being published and put out there. Like, you can play it right now. It's mostly positive on Steam. It's effectively a medieval extraction thing. And we don't know if Project P3 is ever going to be a thing ever. Now that Dark and Darker is out and the whole lawsuit thing, who knows. Anyway, we'll leave Avowed to loop in the background. Anyway, that is your news for February 10th to 16th, 2025. Some interesting things out of State of Play. A lot of them are third party. So we didn't see a lot from Sony's first party things. I think we all know why. Because they went so heavy into live service stuff and now they're pivoting madly away from it. Canceling a lot of those projects, which means a lot of those developers are essentially not exactly starting from scratch. I'm sure they have a bunch of projects in the pre-viz stage, or would have been. If they were smart, they would have had a couple of projects in the pre-viz stage already. So they're just going to ramp up production on one of those instead. We did get to find out what Housemarque have been doing since Returnal, so we do know that. They've been working on Saros, which is, from the vibe we're getting from the trailer, it does feel like it's Returnal 2. Sucker Punch, we know, are working on Ghost of Yotai. Insomniac, not clear. It's supposed to be Wolverine, but we haven't really heard anything about that. And, like, technically we never got an official announcement for Wolverine, right? Or did we? No, we did. We got an official trailer eventually because of all the leaks, and they just put it out. But I don't think they really wanted to do that, is kind of the issue. Guerrilla, I think they're still pushing ahead with their Horizon thing. Possibly. Or was that cancelled? Fuck. Was that one of the cancelled ones? I don't even remember now. Naughty Dog have that bald woman with the not a lightsaber thing. Whatever that's called. Heretic, that one. Anyway, there's a bunch of other ones we don't know what they're doing. Ben Studio wouldn't have been involved in the remaster. I don't think they would have given that to... Can't remember the name of them now. I can't remember the name of the studio they tend to give those remasters to. So Bend are probably working on something else. Blue Point, similarly, we don't really know what they're working on, and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a while. It also kind of calls into question what the various state of plays are supposed to be. Gearbox, Randy Pitchford mentioned that there'd be a bigger gameplay reveal for Borderlands 4 at another state of play in spring. We know there'll be one in summer. It typically happens during Summer Game Fest. And there'll probably be another one later on in the year, but what exactly will be at them, don't really know. But yeah, Tides of Annihilation looks pretty interesting, and I'm here for the kind of return of like slashery type games, you know, like the old God of Wars, Devil May Cry, Darksiders, those kind of things. More of that, please. Less, maybe give the Souls a rest for a bit. Just give Soulsy stuff a little. We've had a lot of it, you know. Give it a rest for a second. Even Night Rain looks like it plays a lot looser than typical Souls games. Anyway, we'll see how that works out for them. Industry bullshit. Bobby going on a fucking venture capital podcast. I mean, do we really expect any different from him? No, not really. There's a rumor that he's maybe gearing up for like a political run, which I really hope isn't happening. Like, it's not going to affect necessarily me, country. Like, it's going to be a US political thing, but I just don't want to see his face anymore. I just really, really don't want to see his face. Anyway, President fucking Bobby. God help us all. Anyway, that's your news for the 10th to 16th of February. What's happening on the channel? Again, if you had a look at the schedule, nothing really. Or not the schedule. If you had a look at the VODs, nothing. Anyway, I mentioned last week that I was playing RoboCop. I was really enjoying it, and I've now finished it, platinumed it. It was a good game. I quite liked it. Yes, there's some difficulty spikes, and the story peters out a little bit, kinda. It doesn't really feel like it's a cathartic ending. But it does give you, you know, you do feel like RoboCop. You're kind of plodding about. It's certainly not a cover shooter for RoboCop and so on and so forth. They did a lot with what was probably a very small budget, I think. And they, you know, there's a lot of asset reuse. You go to the same areas a couple of times, but they change it up a little bit every time you get there. But it does give you the idea that it's like an evolving world. You know, like the things that are happening in the story are making an effect in the local area and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, I quite liked it. After that, I started playing Industria. So I saw a trailer for the sequel, Industria 2, a while ago. I think it was opening night live, maybe 2023, something like that. And I thought that looked kind of interesting, and I went looking for the original game, and it turned out I had already bought it at some point because it was already in my library. So the idea with Industria is it's a sort of alternative timeline thing. This is some stage around the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then time traveling shenanigans. There's some kind of AI that worms its way through parallel universes and stuff like that. It's got a pretty high concept idea, a pretty high concept premise that the story doesn't really lean into at all. It's kind of going for somewhat of a survival horror that's also a shooter. I don't know about the horror element exactly. There's certainly like a survival-y bit to it. Like enemies, you do take a lot of damage if you're getting hit, and resources are scarce and so on. At least if you're playing it on hardcore mode. If you're playing it on normal mode, no, resources really aren't that scarce. Enemies still hit pretty hard, which you're gonna find, you know, health potions and ammo kind of everywhere. Despite what you're seeing in the trailer, it's not really a shooter. This is probably the most aggressive, I guess, part, the most hectic part of the game. There's like 1 or 2 sections where you are faced with a lot of enemies, but for the most part, you're faced with like 1 or 2, and they're pretty easy to take out. Again, it's a lot of it is resource management. It's like, how many bullets does it take to take this thing out, and can I spare the bullets, and so on. It's again, this is hardcore mode. If you're playing it on normal mode, it's not really going to be an issue. As long as you look around the environment, you'll always have enough ammo. Anyway, yeah, I was kind of disappointed because it didn't really lean into its premise that well. I felt it does feel like it's setting itself up for a sequel already. And the sequel hadn't been announced or anything like that up until then. So, yeah, I don't know. Usually when I have a feeling that I don't know if I liked something, it's usually that I didn't. It's usually that I'm just disappointed. And I think that's kind of where I'm coming down on it. Anyway, that does mean that I'm looking for another game to play. But that also hopefully means that because I'm in the middle of a game to play, I can actually go back to streaming something. Anyway, we'll let RoboCop loop instead. Anyway, that's your news for 10th to 16th February 2025. Your channel update as well for the same dates. So yeah, I'm hoping to get Hello Buddy in this week. It's slightly less hectic week this week. Last whiles have been a lot of personal things happening in the evenings, which means I haven't been able to stream. Anyway, hopefully that will come to an end, and you'll see my pretty face again. Anyway, hopefully I won't be covered in coffee this time. Why is this thing white? Fuck's sake. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully I'll see you before the next weekly news recap. But if I don't, hopefully I see you then. All right, have a good one. Bye.